The $3 million hug was about to destroy everything Ella Palmer had worked for. At 6 a.m. on a Monday morning, her worn Converse sneakers squeaked against the pristine marble floor of Ward Industries' corporate tower, each step echoing like an intruder. Alarm in the reverent silence of America's most powerful business empire. The security guards flanking her looked like they could bench press small cars, their expressions carved from stone as they escorted her across the lobby. "Are you kidding me, Ella? You hugged who?" Her best friend's hysterical voice still rang in her ears from the phone call 30 minutes ago. Well, technically, Ella thought, as she adjusted her vintage messenger bag strap, I didn't know who he was when it happened. 48 hours earlier, the Union Square Green Market had been packed on a typical Saturday. Ella was rushing between vendor stalls, juggling bags of ingredients for her family's food truck when she collided violently with someone. Artisanal bread, organic cheese, heirloom tomatoes, and fresh herbs went flying in all directions, creating a gastronomic explosion in the middle of the walkway. "I'm so sorry, so sorry." Ella dropped to the ground, desperate to gather everything before people stepped on the food. What a disaster. When she looked up, she found a man in an impeccable suit completely out of place at the farmer's market, kneeling beside her, helping collect her groceries. Dark hair perfectly styled now with a basil leaf on top. Serious blue eyes, but with a hint of hidden amusement. "The sourdough appears to be intact," he said, examining the loaf with the gravity of someone analyzing a multi-million-dollar contract. "Just some superficial scrapes?" Ella laughed. First a giggle, then a full belly laugh. "You're analyzing the condition of bread like it's a medical report." "It's artisanal sourdough," he replied, completely serious. "It deserves proper assessment." And that's when it happened. Ella was laughing so hard, feeling so light, that when he extended his hand to help her up, she pulled him into a spontaneous hug. A hug of gratitude, a hug of relief. A hug that lasted exactly 15 seconds and was photographed by 17 different people. "Thank you," she murmured against his shoulder, breathing in expensive cologne mixed with the scent of fresh herbs from the market. "You saved my lunch prep." When they separated, he studied her for a moment as if trying to solve a puzzle. "Samuel," he said, extending his hand formally after their informal embrace. "Ella," she shook his hand, still smiling. "And sorry about the pesto on your tie." He looked down, noticing for the first time the green stain on his Italian silk tie. "I've seen worse," he lied, and Ella laughed again. Now 48 hours later, Ella was discovering that her Samuel from the market was actually Samuel Ward, CEO of the largest investment firm in the country, America's most eligible bachelor. According to Forbes, and apparently someone who never ever showed physical affection in public, the elevator dinged softly as they reached the 47th floor, executive level. The security guard gestured for her to step out. "Miss Palmer," a crisp voice called. A woman in her 50s, with silver hair, pulled into a perfect chignon and a smile. That could-cut glass approached. "A Margaret Walsh, Mr. Ward's executive assistant. He's waiting for you in the conference room." "Conference room?" Ella's voice cracked slightly. "I thought this was just a conversation." Margaret's smile didn't waver, but her eyes held a glint of what might have been sympathy. "Mr. Ward doesn't do just conversations, dear. He does strategic meetings." As they walked down a hallway lined with original Rothkos and Pollocks, Ella caught glimpses of her reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows. Her curly blonde hair was escaping its ponytail. Her vintage band t-shirt was wrinkled. And she was pretty sure she still had flour under her fingernails from this morning's baking. "What the heck am I doing here?" Margaret stopped in front of. "Imposing double doors?" "A word of advice," she whispered, leaning closer. "Samuel Ward has been the same for the past 8 years. Controlled, calculated, completely closed off. But in the past 48 hours, she paused, studying Ella with curiosity. He's been different. So whatever you did at that market, it worked." Before Ella could ask what she meant, the doors opened. Samuel Ward stood with his back to them, staring out at the Manhattan skyline. Gone was the suit from Saturday. This one was even more expensive, perfectly tailored, making him look like he could buy and sell small countries before lunch. which Ella realized with growing panic he probably could. "Leave us, Margaret," he said without turning around. The doors closed with a soft click, and suddenly Ella was alone with the man she'd spontaneously hugged at a farmer's market. The man whose photograph with her arms around him was apparently now trending on social media with the hashtag Ward hugged. "You know," Samuel said, finally turning around, "in 8 years of running this company, no one has ever cost me $3 million with a single gesture." Ella blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" His blue eyes, the same ones that had looked amused over scattered vegetables, were now completely unreadable. "Ward Industries stock dropped 2% this morning. That's roughly $3 million in market value. All because America's most emotionally unavailable CEO," he made air quotes, "was caught in what the tabloids are calling a moment of genuine human connection." "Oh," Ella's voice was very small. "Oh no, oh yes." Samuel moved closer and she caught that same expensive cologne from Saturday. "Congratulations, Ella Palmer. You've accomplished what Harvard MBAs, Fortune 500 CEOs, and heads of state have failed to do." His lips curved into the slightest smile, the first crack in his corporate armor. "You made me interesting." "Interesting is one word for it," Ella managed, trying to process the fact that she was apparently responsible for a stock market dip. Catastrophic might be another. Samuel's smile widened just a fraction. "I prefer opportunity," he gestured to the conference table where 2 cups of coffee sat waiting. Ella noticed one was in a paper cup from Joe's Coffee, her favorite spot near the food truck. The other was in fine china that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "You had someone find out my coffee order?" she asked, settling into a leather chair that was more comfortable than her entire apartment. "Due diligence," Samuel replied, taking his seat across from her. "I always research before important negotiations." Negotiations. Ella nearly choked on her first sip. The coffee was perfect, vanilla latte with oat milk, extra shot. "What exactly are we negotiating?" Samuel opened a tablet and slid it across the table. The screen showed her face mid-laugh, arms wrapped around him at the farmer's market. The photo had 2.3 million likes and counting. "Damage control," he said simply. More accurately, strategic repositioning. Ella scrolled through the comments, her eyes widening. "Oh my God, he looks human. Who is she?" "Samuel Ward has a heart confirmed. They're so cute together." "This is insane," she muttered. "People are shipping us. There's already fan art. Fan art." Samuel looked genuinely puzzled. "You've never met her mind." Ella looked up at him. "So what's your strategic repositioning?" Samuel leaned back, and for a moment the corporate mask slipped. He looked tired. "For 8 years I've been America's most eligible bachelor and most emotionally unavailable CEO. It's been useful. People expect nothing from me personally, which lets me focus entirely on business." "Sounds lonely." "Efficient," he corrected quickly. But now he gestured at the tablet. "The board thinks this humanizes me. Makes the company more relatable. Stock's already recovering and we're trending on every platform." Ella raised an eyebrow. "I called you here to offer you a job. I have a job. I run Palmer's Kitchen with my mom as my girlfriend." The coffee cup slipped from Ella's fingers, clattering against the saucer. "You're what now?" Samuel was back in full CEO mode. "All business. 6-month contract. Public appearances, social media presence, carefully managed relationship narrative. In exchange, I'll invest $2 million in Palmer's Kitchen. Enough to expand into permanent locations, hire staff, turn your food truck into a restaurant. Empire." Ella stared at him. "You want to pay me to be your fake girlfriend? I want to pay you to help me maintain this new image while you build your business. It's mutually beneficial. It's crazy. It's brilliant." Samuel pulled out an actual contract. Apparently he'd had his lawyers working all weekend. 6 months, Ella. You get to save your family business and expand beyond your wildest dreams. I get to keep the board happy and maintain market confidence." Ella flipped through the contract, her mind reeling. The numbers were staggering. Not just the investment, but the salary for being his girlfriend. She could pay off her student loans, help her mom retire, maybe even open that second location they'd been dreaming about. What would I have to do exactly? Attend events with? Me. Post occasionally on social media. My team will help with that. Be seen at restaurants, charity galas, the opera, the opera. Ella laughed. Do I look like an opera person to you? Samuel studied her. Really looked at her for the first time since she'd walked in. The wrinkled band t-shirt, the flower under her fingernails, the way she tucked her curly hair behind her ear when she was thinking. No, he said honestly. You look like someone who'd laugh at the wrong moments and ask if they have snacks. Don't have snacks at the opera? See, that's exactly the kind of authentic reaction that will make this work. Samuel leaned forward. The media is obsessed with finding out who you are. Control that narrative. Show them someone real, someone relatable, someone who makes the cold-hearted CEO seem human. Ella was quiet for a long moment, reading through the contract terms. What happens after 6 months? We stage an amicable breakup, cite busy schedules. Mutual respect, remain friends. By then, the market will have adjusted to my new image, and you'll have your restaurant empire. And if I say no? Samuel's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Then I respect your decision, and we both go back to our lives. Will still have cost me $3 million, but I'll figure out another way to handle the situation. There was something in his tone, not quite disappointment, but close. Ella found herself studying his face, remembering the man who'd helped her pick up vegetables, who'd analyzed the condition of bread with such serious concern. Can I ask you something? Of course.
At the market, when you were helping me with
The groceries. Were you just being polite? Or did you actually want to help? Samuel was quiet for so long that Ella thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, he said, I was supposed to be at a business brunch that morning. Potential merger worth $500 million. But I saw you laughing and He paused, looking almost confused. I forgot where I was supposed to be. You missed a $500 million meeting to help me pick up vegetables. The merger fell through anyway, he said quickly. Bad financials. But Ella caught the slight pink tinge to his ears and smiled. Okay, I'll do it. 6 months. Fake girlfriend, opera snacks and all. His hand. But I have conditions. Name them. She'll see right through it, and she's been worried about me being single. Let her think I'm actually dating someone successful for once. Samuel nodded, agreed. Second, I still run my food truck. The investment is separate from the girlfriend contract. Palmer's Kitchen operates independently, of course. Third, Ella grinned mischievously. If I'm going to be your fake girlfriend, I'm going to be the best fake girlfriend you've ever had. Which means you're going to have to actually spend time with me, get to know me, maybe even pretend to like me a little. I don't pretend, Samuel said seriously. Good, then this should be interesting. They shook hands across the table, and Ella felt that same jolt of electricity she'd experienced at the farmer's market. Samuel's eyes widened slightly as if he'd felt it too. So, Ella said, settling back in her chair with her coffee, when do we start? And please tell me the first event isn't the opera because I definitely need time to figure out what one wears to pretend to enjoy.
Hours of people singing dramatically in Italian.
From him, code through the conference room. Actually, he said, I was thinking we'd start with something more at your speed. There's a food festival this weekend. I thought Palmer's Kitchen could cater our first official public appearance. Ella blinked. You want me to work our fake first date? I want to eat food that doesn't come from a 5-star restaurant kitchen? For once, and I want to watch you do what you love. Samuel's expression grew serious again. If we're going to convince people this is real, Ella, we need to find the parts that actually are. For the first time since walking into his corporate tower, Ella felt like she was seeing the real Samuel Ward, not the CEO, not the businessman, but the guy who'd helped her collect vegetables and analyze the structural integrity of sourdough. Bread all right? Samuel Ward, she said, raising her coffee cup in a mock toast. Let's break the internet. The Brooklyn Bridge Park Food Festival was a disaster waiting to happen, and Ella had faced many challenges in her 26 years culinary school finals, health department inspections, her mother's attempts to set her up with nice boys from the neighborhood. But nothing had prepared her for trying to teach America's most powerful CEO how to eat a lobster roll in public without looking like he was conducting a board meeting. Samuel, it's food, not a hostile takeover, she whispered, watching him analyze the sandwich from every angle while cameras flashed around them. Just bite it. The structural integrity seems questionable, he replied seriously, holding the overstuffed roll like it might explode. What if the contents spill out? Then you lick your fingers and keep eating. Okay, it's called being human. 3 days had passed since their contract signing, and their first official public appearance was drawing more attention than either had anticipated. The Brooklyn Bridge Park Food Festival was packed with vendors, families, and apparently every food blogger and gossip columnist in New York City. Palmer's Kitchen food truck was parked in prime position thanks to Samuel's influence, which Ella suspected meant someone received a very large check. Her mother, Rosa Palmer, was working the grill with barely contained excitement at meeting. Her daughter's new boyfriend, Mia Rosa, had whispered earlier, pulling Ella aside while Samuel talked with festival organizers. He's very handsome, but does he know how to smile? He looks like he's calculating taxes in his head. Just nervous, Mom. First time meeting the family and all? Wasn't entirely a lie. Samuel did look nervous, though Ella suspected it had more to do with being surrounded by normal people eating with their hands than meeting potential in-laws. Mr. Ward. Mr. Ward, reporter pushed through the crowd, microphone extended. Channel 7 News. How does it feel to be dating outside your usual social circle? Samuel stiffened, but Ella smoothly stepped in. It feels like I'm dating a guy who thinks ketchup is a food group, she said with a grin, earning laughs from the gathered crowd. We're working on his palate. I don't think ketchup is a food group, Samuel protested, finally taking a bite of his lobster roll. His eyes widened slightly. Wow, this is actually remarkable. See progress? Ella announced to the crowd, who laughed and applauded. What followed was perhaps the most surreal hour of Ella's life. She watched Samuel Ward, a man who owned more companies than some people owned shoes, gamely try street tacos, kettle corn, and something called bacon-wrapped everything, while maintaining polite conversation with everyone, from food bloggers to families with sticky-fingered toddlers. He's really trying, her best friend, Madison, observed, appearing at Ella's elbow with a funnel cake. I mean, he looks like he's about to faint every time someone touches him, but he's trying. It's actually kinda sweet. It's actually kinda sweet, Ella admitted, watching Samuel crouch down to talk to a little girl who'd asked for his autograph. Yesterday, he had his assistant research appropriate food festival attire and showed up in designer jeans that probably cost more than my car, which explains why he looks like a male model playing dress-up as a regular person. They watched as Samuel stood up from signing the little girl's notebook, only to have her mother pull out her phone for a selfie. He managed a smile that almost looked natural. Ella Palmer. Both women turned to see a perfectly put-together, blonde in designer athleisure, approaching with a camera crew in tow. Ella's stomach dropped. Vanessa Chen, Manhattan Lifestyle TV, the woman announced with a smile that never reached her eyes. I'm doing a segment on New York's most unexpected couples. Mind if I ask you a few questions? Before Ella could respond, Vanessa was already signaling her cameraman. So Ella, how exactly does a food truck owner catch the attention of New York's most eligible bachelor? Some people are calling it a modern fairy tale. Some people need better hobbies, Ella replied sweetly. Vanessa's smile tightened. Come now, surely you can understand the curiosity. Samuel Ward has been photographed with supermodels, actresses, women who've graced the covers of Vogue, and now he's with, she gestured vaguely at Ella's casual sundress and sneakers, someone more accessible. The crowd around them had gone quiet, sensing drama. Ella felt heat rise in her cheeks, not from embarrassment, but from anger. You're absolutely right, she said, her voice steady. I'm not a supermodel, not an actress. I didn't go to finishing school or learn to waltz at cotillion balls. Samuel appeared at her side, having noticed the commotion. His jaw was tight as he took in the scene. I'm someone who gets up at 5 a.m. to prep food because I believe everyone deserves a great meal, regardless of their bank account, Ella continued. I'm someone who knows the difference between authentic street tacos and the overpriced imitations they serve in trendy restaurants. And I'm someone who thinks a man's worth isn't measured by the zeros in his portfolio. She turned to look directly at Samuel, and for a moment forgot they were performing for cameras. I'm someone who sees Samuel Ward, not his net worth, not his business empire, just him. The guy who helped a stranger pick up groceries. The man who analyzes bread like it matters. You know? Someone who's smart enough to run a Fortune 500 company, but had never tried kettle corn until today. The crowd was dead silent. Samuel was staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. And if that's not good enough for some people, Ella concluded, turning back to Vanessa, then maybe they're not good enough for him. Vanessa looked like she'd been slapped. The cameraman was still rolling, capturing every word. It's quite a passionate defense, Samuel said quietly, stepping closer to Ella. Thank you. Just returning the favor, she replied, suddenly aware that they were standing very close, that his hand was resting lightly on her lower back, that the entire crowd was watching them with rapt attention. You know, Samuel said, his voice carrying easily to the surrounding people, Ella's absolutely right. I have dated supermodels and actresses. Want to know the difference? He turned to address the crowd, but his eyes never left Ella's face. None of them ever made me want to skip board meetings to help them pick up vegetables. None of them ever made me laugh at myself. None of them ever defended me like I was worth defending rather than just worth dating. The crowd erupted. In awes and applause, several people started taking pictures of what looked like a genuinely tender moment between two people falling in love, which was exactly what it was supposed to look like. Except Ella's heart was pounding, and Samuel's hand on her back felt warm and protective. And when he smiled at her, really smiled, not his corporate smile, she forgot for a moment that this was all pretend. Should we get out of here? He murmured low enough that only she could hear. Definitely. They made their excuses to Rosa, who insisted on packing them enough food for a week, said goodbye to the lingering crowd, and escaped to Samuel's car, a surprisingly modest BMW rather than the limousine Ella had expected. That was Samuel. Started as they pulled away from the festival and tents. Weird. A complete disaster. Effective, he finished. That clip is going to be everywhere by tonight. Vanessa Chen just handed us the perfect soundbite for authenticity. Ella looked at him sideways. So you're saying I played the part well? Samuel was quiet for a moment, navigating through weekend traffic. Were you playing a part? The question hung between them, heavier than it should have been for a fake relationship 3 days old. I don't know, Ella admitted. Were you? I don't know either. They drove in comfortable silence for a while, the festival noise fading behind them. Finally, Samuel cleared his throat. For what it's worth, kettle corn is actually quite good, though I maintain that the structural integrity of that lobster roll was questionable. Ella burst out laughing. Samuel Ward, Billionaire CEO, defeated by a sandwich. It was a very aggressive sandwich. Wait until you try Mom's meatball sub. That thing could take down a small building. I was looking forward to it, Samuel said. And Ella was surprised to realize he meant it as they headed back toward Manhattan. Ella watched the city skyline come into view and wondered what exactly she'd gotten herself into. Because somewhere between defending Samuel to a reporter and watching him crouch down to talk to a little girl, this fake relationship was starting to feel dangerously real. And judging by the way Samuel kept glancing at her when he thought she wasn't looking, she wasn't the only one feeling it. 2 weeks later, Ella Palmer had never owned a dress that cost more than her monthly grocery budget. But there she was, standing in front of a full-length mirror in Samuel's penthouse apartment, wearing a midnight blue gown that his stylist had selected, a dress that probably cost more than her food truck. I look like I'm playing dress-up, she muttered, adjusting the delicate straps for the 100th time. You look perfect, Samuel's voice came from behind her. When she turned, her breath caught. 2 weeks of dating Samuel Ward had taught her many things. He took his coffee black. He had read every book in his extensive library at least twice, and he looked good in everything. But Samuel, in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, was something else. You clean up pretty well yourself, she managed, trying to ignore the way her heart did a little flip when he smiled. Margaret picked it out. Apparently I have terrible taste in formal wear. Margaret has excellent taste. Ella smoothed down the flowing skirt of her gown. Dinner. This isn't just any charity dinner, Samuel said, moving to stand beside her in front of the mirror. They looked like they belonged in a magazine spread, the powerful CEO and his stunning girlfriend, ready to take on New York's elite. This is the Children's Hospital Foundation Gala. 500 of the city's wealthiest philanthropists, 3 courses prepared by James Beard winners, and approximately 50 photographers waiting to document our every move. No pressure at all, Ella said dryly. The past 2 weeks had been a whirlwind of carefully orchestrated public appearances. Coffee dates at trendy cafes where they happened to be photographed. A Central Park picnic that drew dozens of onlookers. An art gallery opening where Samuel had spent 20 minutes earnestly listening to. Ella explained why she thought one particular sculpture looked like a giant pretzel. Each outing had felt more natural than the last. Samuel was surprisingly funny once he relaxed, with a dry wit that caught her off guard. He asked thoughtful questions about her culinary training, her family, her dreams, beyond the food truck. And when he talked about his work, really talked, not just corporate speak, his passion for building something meaningful was undeniable. But tonight was different. Tonight they'd be surrounded by his world-old money families. Business associates, the kind of people who had known Samuel since Harvard and would see right through any pretense. "Are you nervous?" Samuel asked, studying her reflection. "Terrified," Ella admitted. "Your ex-fiancée is going to be there." "Ex-fiancée," Samuel corrected quietly. "And Carolyn will be Carolyn." Ella had Googled Carolyn Ashworth after learning she'd be at tonight's gala. A face that belonged on magazine covers and a charity foundation that bore her family name. Everything Ella wasn't? "Tell me again why you two broke up." Samuel's reflection went still. She wanted a merger, not a marriage. "When I confronted her," she said, "it was just smart strategy combining our resources. That's awful. That's business." But his voice carried a bitter edge. Carolyn never saw the difference. The penthouse intercom buzzed. "Mr. Ward, your car is ready," came Margaret's voice. "Showtime," Samuel said. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing light over marble statues while New York's elite mingled beneath priceless artwork. "Breathe," Samuel murmured as they entered. "The main hall? You belong here as much as anyone else." But the stairs said otherwise. Ella could feel the weight of curious gazes, hear the whispered conversations that stopped when she passed. She'd gone from anonymous food truck owner to public. Curiosity overnight, and the scrutiny was overwhelming. A melodious voice cut through the crowd. "Caroline?" Ashworth glided toward them in a champagne-colored gown that probably cost more than most people's cars. Blonde hair swept into an elegant chignon, diamond jewelry that caught the light with every movement. She was everything Ella had expected and more polished, sophisticated, perfect. Carolyn, Samuel replied evenly. "You look well, as do you." Caroline's smile was practiced perfection as her gaze swept over Ella. "And you must be the famous Ella Palmer, the one who's been making such waves." There was something in her tone, not quite hostile, but not friendly either, like a cat studying a mouse. "That's me," Ella replied, forcing a smile, though I think famous might be overstating it. "Oh, I don't think so. Everyone's been talking about Samuel's mysterious new girlfriend." Caroline's laugh was like tinkling glass. "It's all quite romantic, really. I'm being completely sincere. It's refreshing to see you with someone so... ... Caroline paused as if searching for the right word. Authentic. The word hung in the air like a challenge. The adrenaline coursing through her veins. Authenticity is important. I find that people who have to work for what they have tend to value honesty over strategy. Caroline's smile never wavered, but her eyes went cold. How philosophical, and how lovely that you can afford such idealism. Perhaps we should find our table, of course, Caroline agreed sweetly. As she glided away, Ella felt like she'd just survived her first real test of the evening, but judging by the way other guests were. Watching their interaction, more challenges lay ahead. "She's everything I expected," Ella said quietly, as they moved toward their assigned table. "She's everything I used to think I wanted," Samuel replied. "A CEO." Samuel stopped walking and turned to face her. 3 months ago, I would have agreed with you. But perfect on paper, doesn't laugh at the structural integrity of sourdough bread. It doesn't defend strangers from snobbish reporters or ask if the opera has snacks. Something in his voice made Ella's breath catch. "Samuel, Mr. Ward," a booming voice interrupted. "There's the man of the hour." Her background, her relationship with Samuel, her plans for Palmer's Kitchen. Some guests were genuinely curious, others clearly skeptical, but she held her own, drawing on reserves of confidence she didn't know she possessed. Through it all, Samuel stayed close, his presence a steady anchor in the storm of social scrutiny. When an older woman made a snide comment about appropriate matches, he deflected with humor. When a business associate suggested Ella might be out of her depth, Samuel's response was politely devastating. But it was during the silent auction that everything changed. Ella was studying the items. Up for bid weekend getaways, artwork, exclusive dining experiences, when she noticed something that made her heart stop. Tucked between a wine-tasting package and a Broadway theater box was a modest listing that most guests had overlooked. "Kitchen equipment donation for community. Food program," she read aloud. "Current bid $2,500. Samuel looked over her shoulder. "Something interesting. It's for the Riverside Community Center. They run a weekend meal program for families who can't afford groceries." Ella's voice was tight with emotion. "I used to volunteer there when I was in culinary school. Those industrial ovens they're trying to replace are older than I am." She watched as another bidder raised the amount to $3,000. Still far less than the luxury items surrounding it, but life-changing for the families who depended on that program. "The bidding closes in 10 minutes, Samuel observed. "I know." Ella bit her lip, doing quick mental math. Even with her new salary from their arrangement, she couldn't afford to bid competitively against people who treated thousands of dollars like pocket change. Without a word, Samuel picked up the bidding paddle from their table. "What are you doing?" Ella whispered. "What you would do if you could." He raised the paddle, increasing the bid to $5,000. A murmur went through the crowd as other guests noticed Samuel Ward entering the bidding war. The amounts began climbing. Rapidly, $7,000, $10,000, $15,000. Far more than the equipment was worth, but that wasn't the point anymore. Caroline appeared at Ella's shoulder. "How sweet," she murmured. "Samuel's making a grand gesture for his girlfriend's little charity project." "It's not a project," Ella said firmly. "It's people's lives." "Of course it is." Caroline's smile was razor-sharp. "Though I have to wonder when this relationship runs its course, will he still care about your causes?" "Samuel has a tendency to lose interest once the novelty wears off." The words hit like a physical blow. Ella watched Samuel raise the paddle. Again, 20,000 Nan felt something crack inside her chest, because Caroline was right, wasn't she? This was all temporary, 6-month contract with an expiration date. When it ended, Samuel would go back to his world of corporate mergers and society galas, and she'd go back to her food truck. But the families at Riverside Community Center would still need meals. 25,000, the auctioneer called out. "Do I hear 30? Samuel looked back at Ella, and she saw something in his eyes that made her forget to breathe. Not calculation or strategy, but genuine concern. He cared about this because she cared about it. It's not for show, not for the cameras, but because somewhere in the past 2 weeks, her causes had become his causes. The realization terrified her. 30,000? Caroline's voice rang out clearly. She'd taken a paddle from a nearby table and was smiling triumphantly. For such a worthy cause, the crowd turned to watch this unexpected development. Carolyn Ashworth, old money princess, bidding. Against Samuel Ward and his food truck girlfriend. The drama was better than any theater production. Samuel's jaw tightened. He raised his paddle. 40,000. 50 Caroline countered immediately, her smile never faltering. Ella watched in growing horror as the bid amounts climbed higher and higher. This wasn't about charity anymore. It was about power, about proving points, about two people who knew exactly how to hurt each other. 75,000. Samuel bid, his voice steady, but his knuckles white, where he gripped the paddle. Caroline laughed, the sound carrying across the hushed crowd. $100,000. A collective gasp went up from the assembled guests. $100,000 for kitchen equipment that was worth maybe $15,000 new? It was obscene, even by charity auction standards. Samuel started to raise his paddle again, but Ella caught his wrist. "Stop," she whispered. "Ella, stop." Her voice was louder now, drawing curious stares. "This is insane. That money could feed families for years, not just replace equipment." Caroline's smile widened. "Oh, but darling, it's for charity. Surely you wouldn't want to deprive the community center of such a generous donation." The trap was perfect. Ella backed down. She looked like she didn't care about the cause she'd claimed to champion. If Samuel kept bidding, they'd be throwing away money just to prove a point. Either way, Caroline won. But Ella had spent too many years watching people, with money, use it as a weapon. "You're absolutely right," she said clearly, her voice carrying across the silent room. $100,000 is an incredibly generous donation to the Riverside Community Center. I'm sure they'll be thrilled. She turned to address the crowd, most of whom were watching this drama unfold with fascination. "In fact, I think it's wonderful that Caroline is so passionate about community food programs. Maybe she'd like to join me next Saturday morning when I volunteer there. I'm sure the families would love to meet someone who cares so much about their welfare." Caroline's smile faltered slightly. "I'm sure I could." "Perfect," Ella beamed. "The center opens at 6 a.m. for breakfast prep. Just wear something you don't mind getting messy. Sometimes the industrial dishwasher backs up, and the smell of bleach really sticks to expensive fabrics." A few people in the crowd chuckled. Caroline's perfect composure cracked just a fraction. "Of course," she said stiffly. "I wouldn't miss." "It's wonderful. Samuel can give you the address." Ella turned to the auctioneer. "I believe the bid stands at $100,000. Going once, the auctioneer called, clearly enjoying the drama. Going twice, sold to bidder number 47. Applause erupted around them. Samuel leaned close to Ella's ear. "That was brilliant." "That was expensive," she replied, but she was smiling. "Think she'd actually show up Saturday?" "Not a chance." "Then the community center just got a very generous donation from someone who'll never follow through on the volunteer work." Ella's smile widened. "I can live with that." As they walked away from the auction area, Samuel caught her hand. "You realize you just made an enemy of one of the most connected women in New York society?" "I realize I just called her bluff." Ella squeezed his fingers. "Thank you. For bidding, I mean. Even though it got out of hand." "Oh, it wasn't out of hand until Caroline made it personal." Samuel's voice was tight with anger. "She was trying to humiliate you. Why?" "Because I'm dating her ex-fiancé." Samuel stopped walking. Round them, the gala continued, conversations, laughter, the gentle clink of crystal glasses. But in their small bubble of space, everything felt suddenly serious. "Because she realizes what I'm just starting to understand," he said quietly, "which is—" Samuel looked at her for a long moment, and Ella felt like he was seeing all the way through to her soul. "That this stopped being fake the moment you defended me to that reporter." The words hung between them like a confession. Ella's heart was pounding so loud she was sure everyone in the room could hear it. "Samuel, I know what our contract says. I know this is supposed to end in 4.5 months. His thumb traced across her knuckles. "But I also know that I haven't thought about another woman since you hugged me in that farmer's market. I know that I rearranged 3 board meetings this week just to have lunch with you. And I know that watching Caroline try to tear you down tonight made me want to buy this entire museum just to throw her out of it." Ella stared at him, hardly daring to breathe. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that somewhere between the lobster rolls and the opera jokes and watching you light up when you talk about food, I stopped pretending." Samuel's voice was raw with honesty. "I'm saying that I'm falling in love with you, Ella Palmer. Contract or no contract." The world seemed to stop spinning around them. New York's elite continued their glittering party, but Ella only had eyes for the man in front of her. It's the man who just laid his heart bare in the middle of a crowd of hundreds. "Say something," Samuel whispered, and she could hear the vulnerability in his voice. Instead of speaking, Ella rose up on her toes and kissed him. It wasn't like their carefully staged kisses for the cameras. This was real, desperate, full of weeks of suppressed longing. Samuel's arms came around her, pulling her closer. And Ella forgot where they were, forgot about contracts and fake relationships and society expectations. When they finally broke apart, breathing hard, she realized the entire gala had gone quiet. Hundreds of people were staring at them, cameras flashing, capturing what was undoubtedly the most genuine moment either of them had shared in public. "Well," Ella said, slightly breathless, "I guess we just broke the internet again." Samuel laughed, the sound rich and unguarded, worth every trending hashtag. But as they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, while New York society watched, Ella couldn't shake the feeling that they'd just crossed a line they couldn't uncross. Their fake relationship had just become very, very real, and in 4.5 months, it was all supposed to end. 3 weeks later, Ella stood in the middle of Palmer's Kitchen's brand new permanent location, surrounded by boxes, paint cans, and the organized chaos of a restaurant under construction. Sunlight streamed through the large windows overlooking the Hudson River, illuminating dust motes, dancing in the air like tiny celebrations. "The opening is in 2 days," her mother Rosa said, appearing at her elbow with 2 cups of coffee. "Are you ready?" Ella accepted the cup gratefully, inhaling the familiar comfort of her mother's perfect brew. "The restaurant is ready. The staff is trained. The menu is finalized." She paused, watching contractors install the last of the light fixtures. "But am I ready?" That's a different question. Rosa studied her daughter's face with the intuitive understanding that only mothers possess. This is about more than the restaurant. It wasn't a question. Rosa Palmer might spend her days cooking comfort food, but she had an uncanny ability to see straight through to the heart of any problem. "Samuel and I had a fight," Ella admitted. "A big one, about the contract." Ella's head whipped around in surprise. "You know about the contract?" Rosa's laugh was gentle. "Mia, I've been married to your father for 30 years. I know what real love looks like, and I also know what 2 people trying very hard to convince themselves they're not in love looks like." She patted Ella's cheek. "Plus, no man invests $2 million in a food truck because of good enchiladas. Not even enchiladas as good as mine." Despite everything, Ella smiled. "They are pretty amazing enchiladas, they are. But that's not why he did it." Rosa settled onto a paint-splattered stool. "So what was this fight about?" Ella took a long sip of coffee, buying time to organize her thoughts. The fight had been 3 days ago, and she still felt raw from it. "He wants to extend the contract," she said finally, "indefinitely. And that's bad because it means he still sees this as a business arrangement." The words exploded out of her with more force than she'd intended. "Even after everything that's happened, even after he said he was falling in love with me, he still wants to put it in writing. Schedule our relationship like a board meeting." Rosa was quiet for a moment, watching her daughter pace between the tables. "Did you ask him why?" "I didn't need to ask. It's Samuel Ward. He puts everything in contracts because that's how he controls his world." Ella's voice was bitter. "God forbid he just trusts that 2 people can choose to be together without legal documentation." "Or maybe," Rosa said gently, "he's scared." Ella stopped pacing. "What?" "Think about it, Mia. This man has spent 8 years building walls around his heart. The one time he let someone in before you, she betrayed him, used him. And now here you are, this beautiful, passionate woman who makes him want to tear down all those walls, and he's terrified you're going to disappear." The words hit Ella like a physical blow. She sank into a chair across from her mother. "A contract is the only way he knows how to say, 'Please don't leave me,'" Rosa continued. "It's not romantic, but it's honest. And sometimes honest isn't pretty." Before Ella could respond, the restaurant's front door chimed. She looked up to see Samuel entering, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. His usually perfect hair was slightly mussed, his tie loosened, and there were shadows under his eyes that suggested he hadn't been sleeping well. "I'll go check on the kitchen," Rosa said diplomatically, disappearing through the swinging doors with the speed of someone who'd raised 3 daughters and knew when to make herself scarce. Samuel stood in the doorway for a moment, taking in the transformed space. The rustic wood tables, the open kitchen where guests would be able to watch their meals being prepared, the warm lighting that made everything feel like home. "It's perfect," he said quietly. "It's everything you dreamed it would be. Thank you." Ella's voice was carefully neutral. The investment made it possible. Samuel flinched slightly at the word investment, and Ella immediately regretted the coldness in her tone. "Ella, we need to talk." "I think we said everything we needed to say 3 days ago." "No, we didn't." Samuel moved closer, and she could see the exhaustion in his face, the strain of the past few days. "We said a lot of things we were both too angry to hear properly. We didn't say the things that mattered." Despite her hurt, Ella felt her resolve wavering. "Samuel, I love you." The simple words stopped her cold, not because of a contract or a business arrangement or some strategic repositioning of my public image. "I love you because you make me laugh at the structural integrity of bread. I love you because you defended me to a reporter when you had nothing to gain from it. I love you because you called Caroline's bluff and made her donate $100,000 to charity just to save face." Samuel's voice grew stronger with each word, more certain. "I love you because you get up at 5 a.m. to prep food for people you've never met. I love you because you see the best in everyone, even when they don't deserve it. I love you because you make me want to be better than I am." Tears were starting to gather in Ella's eyes, but she forced herself to stay strong. "Then why the contract, Samuel? Why can't you just trust that this is real?" Samuel ran a hand through his hair, destroying what was left of his perfect styling. "Because I'm terrified," he admitted. "Because everyone I've ever trusted has had an exit strategy. My parents shipped me off to boarding school when I was 8 because I was inconvenient. Caroline was planning to merge our relationship with her father's business interests. My own board of directors would sell me out for the right price." His voice cracked slightly. "And then you came along, and for the first time in my adult life, I wanted something more than success. I wanted a life. I wanted you. But I don't know how to do this without safety nets and contingency plans and legal documentation." Ella felt her anger melting away, replaced by something deeper and more complex. Understanding, maybe? Or compassion?
So,
"You thought you'd put our relationship in a contract. I thought I'd put my commitment to you in writing," Samuel corrected. "Not because I don't trust you, but because I needed you to know that this isn't temporary for me, that I'm not going anywhere." He pulled a folded paper from his jacket pocket. "This isn't the contract you think it is, Ella," with trembling fingers. She unfolded the document. But instead of legal jargon about public appearances and social media posts, she found something else entirely. "It's a partnership agreement," Samuel explained. "For Palmer's Kitchen, 50-50 ownership, equal decision-making power, shared profits and losses. Everything we build together." Ella stared at the papers, hardly believing what she was reading. "You want to be my business partner? I want to be your everything." "Partner," Samuel said softly. "Business, personal life. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep next to you every night. I want to argue with you about menu choices and support you through health department inspections. I want to expand Palmer's Kitchen into the restaurant empire you've always dreamed of. And I want to do it as your equal, not your investor." He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the hope and fear warring in his blue eyes. "I know I'm doing this backwards. I know I should probably get down on one knee and propose with a ring instead of a business contract. But this is how I know how to show you that I'm serious, that I'm not going anywhere. I want to build a life with you, Ella Palmer, starting with the thing you love most." Ella looked down at the contract again, then back up at Samuel's face. "You're an idiot," she said softly. Samuel's face fell. What?" "You're an idiot if you think I need legal documentation to know that you love me." She set the papers aside and moved closer to him. "You proved that when you bid $40,000 on kitchen equipment. Proved it when you learned to eat street tacos without using a knife and fork. You proved it when you spent 3 hours at the community center last weekend helping me prep meals, even though you had to cancel a board meeting to do it." Samuel's hands came up to cup her face. "Then I'll marry you," Ella interrupted, "not because of a contract or a business arrangement, but because somewhere between a farmer's market collision and a charity gala disaster? I fell completely, stupidly, irreversibly in love with you. Samuel's kiss was desperate and relieved and full of promises for the future. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ella rested her forehead against his. "But I'm keeping the partnership agreement," she said with a grin. "Equal decision-making power sounds pretty good to me." Samuel laughed, the sound rich and unguarded and full of joy. "Deal. Though I reserve the right to veto any menu items that might compromise structural integrity. We'll see about that." 2 days later, Palmer's Kitchen opened its doors to a line that stretched around the block. Food critics, society figures, and regular neighborhood families all waited together to experience what the newspapers were calling the most authentic dining experience in Manhattan. Ella moved through the dining room greeting guests, checking on tables, making sure everything was perfect. Through the kitchen's pass-through window, she could see Samuel working alongside Rosa and the rest of the staff. His expensive shirt sleeves rolled up, his tie long since abandoned. A look of intense concentration on his face as he plated dishes. He'd insisted on working the opening night service, despite having no formal culinary training. "If I'm going to be your partner," he'd said, "I need to understand every aspect of the business." What he lacked in technique, he made up for in determination. And Rosa had declared him trainable, which was high praise coming from Ella's mother. "Excuse me, are you Ella Palmer? I'm Jennifer Walsh from Food and Wine magazine. Could I ask you a few questions about tonight?" "Of course. This restaurant is quite a departure from your food truck." Ella glanced toward the kitchen, where Samuel was carefully garnishing plates under Rosa's watchful eye. "Sometimes life gives you unexpected opportunities," she said. "The key is being brave enough to take them." "And what about your relationship with Samuel Ward? How has dating New York's most eligible bachelor affected your business?" Ella smiled, thinking of the ring Samuel had given her just that morning, not a massive diamond that would impress society photographers, but a simple band with their initials engraved inside, along with the coordinates of the Union Square Farmers Market where they'd first met. "Samuel isn't New York's most eligible bachelor anymore," she said, holding up her left hand where the ring caught the restaurant's warm lighting. "As of this morning, he's my fiancé, and he's not eligible for anyone but me." The reporter's eyes widened. "This is breaking news. When's the wedding?" "When we find time between restaurant services," Ella laughed. "We're thinking maybe a small ceremony at the farmer's market, where it all began." As the reporter hurried away to file her story, Ella felt familiar arms wrap around her waist from behind. "House, our first night going." Her ear. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. She leaned back against his chest, watching their restaurant full of happy diners. "Though I think your plating skills need work," Rosa said the same thing. She also said, "I have potential," which apparently is the highest compliment she gives to anyone who isn't you. Ella turned in his arms, not caring that half the restaurant could see them. "I love you, Samuel Ward. Love you too, Ella Palmer." Soon to be Ella Ward. "Actually," Ella said with a mischievous grin, "I was thinking maybe Samuel Palmer has a nice ring to it." Samuel's laugh drew curious glances from nearby diners, but he didn't care. Let them look. Let them photograph this moment and splash it across social media. Let the whole world know that Samuel Ward, former most eligible bachelor, was completely and irrevocably off the market. 3 months later, they were married in Union Square Farmers Market on a sunny Saturday morning, surrounded by vendors, fresh vegetables, and the scent of artisanal bread. Rosa cried through the entire ceremony. Margaret threw the most perfectly organized reception New York had ever seen. And Caroline Ashworth, true to form, never did show up for her volunteer shift at the community center, but Samuel and Ella were there every weekend, serving meals and proving that the best partnerships in business and in love are built not on contracts, but on trust, commitment, and the occasional, perfectly timed hug. The end asterisk like this video, if the story touched your heart, subscribe for more emotional tales and share with someone who believes in the power of true love, and let us know in the comments. We love connecting with our global community of romance lovers.